Today, we paint another Cthulhu figure. I'm Don, welcome to this Kickstarter video. Our painting method for today is painting with the airbrush, then painting with oils. I am using my Gallery Swallowtail airbrush to start this project. Our first color is Banshee Brown. Banshee Brown is from the John Blanche paint sets. The idea here is to pretend that we are painting a huge 300mm Cthulhu model. My apologies, as I had to paint a smaller 150mm for this video tutorial, since painting a huge figure will be extra challenging to film. Anyways, back to the video. Notice how I painted Banshee Brown, mostly on the top areas. This will give a zenithal effect to our painting. Now, we paint Carnelian Skin. This color is a redder brown, perfect underpainting for warm skin, reds, pinks, and even oranges. We paint Carnelian Skin on the tentacles, belly, soles, and palms of our Cthulhu. The thinning of all the Warpaints fanatics in this video was with the airbrush medium. I thinned the paints roughly 4 parts thinner medium and 1 part paint. I airbrushed all the colors in at least 2 thin coats. As mentioned earlier, I am using the Gallery Swallowtail airbrush. I am using a 0.5 nozzle and airbrushing at 30 psi. Now we paint Midnight Olive. Midnight Olive is from the John Blanche paint set. This color is a warm green. We paint Midnight Olive on the areas that we perceive are the green skin areas. We paint mostly on the sides and the top of the figure. Similar to the Banshee Brown, painting mostly on the top will give us a nice zenithal effect. As usual, apply Midnight Olive in multiple thin coats. Force cure the layers with a hairdryer in between coats. Notice the undersides of the details of the figure. The undersides and the deeper crevices remain dark. This is the result of airbrushing mostly from the top. Now we want more airbrush control, so we switch to my 0.3 Infinity Detail airbrush. We start introducing flesh tone to our Cthulhu. We start by painting Mocha Skin. As usual, we are painting Mocha Skin in multiple thin coats. Notice the angle of how I am painting the Mocha Skin. I am painting this color at an angle that will keep the zenithal effect that we have established so far. You can see in the video right now how I take advantage of painting in thin layers. Thin layers with thin paints will always result to a nice finish. You can also take advantage of the thin layers by painting more on the raised areas. This will create more volume. Now, we are painting the face of our Cthulhu. These areas are the last flesh areas of the figure. Our Cthulhu is looking good so far. Now, we add a cooler green to our painting. We will use Blighted Green. Blighted Green is from the John Blanche paint sets. This is a nice, cool, very vibrant green color. I always say this in my painting videos at YouTube. Airbrushing is the most efficient way to painting the base colors of any figure or miniature. Once you get the hang of thinning your paints and cleaning your airbrush during painting, airbrushing is the fastest way to get great results. Always remember though, to cure each layer of painting with a hair dryer. Once happy with your Blighted Green painting, we now proceed to add a very saturated red to our Cthulhu. We now paint Wyvern Fury from the Cool Reds Triad. I am using a piece of tissue paper to mask the belly, but you may also use a piece of plastic cling wrap. Now, I am painting all the suction details on our Cthulhu. I am fine with the overspray as it creates a nice gradation towards the green skin. My wife hates this. I mean, she hates seeing these holes. As for me, I enjoyed painting these details so much. As usual, I painted this bright color in multiple thin coats. You can get away with painting the holes with a regular brush, but as mentioned earlier, I like the gradation produced by the overspray over the green skin. The tonal values created by the overspray is not easy to achieve with a regular brush after all. Now we are done. We are done with the airbrushing of the base colors. I'm pretty happy with our result. We have a deep, cool green, a rich flesh color, and a very bright red color. The red color is the perfect accent color for our Cthulhu. I only spent like 3, maybe 4 hours of airbrushing. Now, we need to let this cure for at least 24 hours. Before we proceed to oil painting, we need to do some quick dry brushing. The dry brushing will add quick highlights to our painting. First, I dry brushed Medieval Forest over the blighted green areas. Medieval Forest is from the desaturated cool greens triad. After dry brushing Medieval Forest, I then dry brush Forest Fawn. Forest Fawn is also from the desaturated cool greens triad. I dry brush Forest Fawn with a lighter pressure. I wanted Forest Fawn to paint only the raised details. Dry brushing is a very low focus painting method. Dry brushing is easy, fun, and will always give you quick results. This method is a perfect warm-up method before we paint with oil paints. Notice in the video, I am dry brushing different colors on our Cthulhu. More colors will give us more color depth. Oh, I almost forgot. I gave this Cthulhu figure a nice coat of matte varnish and let it cure for another day before the dry brushing. The matte varnish gave the figure a nice, even matte finish before the dry brushing. Now, once happy with the dry brushed highlights, we need to give this figure another coat of matte varnish. Then, let the varnish cure for another day before we do oil painting. Now we paint with oils. You need a palette knife, a few boar hair brushes, a nice brush for the highlights later, and a metal dish for thinning the oil paints. For miniature painting with oils, you need odorless mineral spirit. I use Gamsol for miniature painting with oils. I am using a glass palette for oils, but you may use a typical wooden palette or even a piece of tile. I am using oil paints from different brands. Now you might ask, what is the difference of a pricey oil paint and a cheap student-grade oil paint? Well, pricier oil paints have better pigments and less extenders or binders. Cheaper oils generally have lesser coverage. Cheaper oils are typically glacier. More oils and more extenders or mediums in them. You will want a few good quality oil paints for highlighting and actual painting. The cheaper oils, on the other hand, are great for washes and glazing. I recommend you get a burnt umber, maybe an ivory black, white, and an ochre oil paint. These few tubes should be a good starting point. Once you have your oils, you need to wick them on a piece of cardboard. Let the oil paints sit on the cardboard for roughly 10 to 30 minutes. The cardboard will wick the excess oils from the paints. We start our oil painting with a thick wash. Use your mineral spirit in the thinning of the oil paint. The main rule, well, not rule, there is no rules in art. The main guideline when painting with oil paints is fat over thin. Fat over thin simply means you paint thin layers first before the fatter layers. The thinner layers like washes and glazes dry to the touch in an hour to 4 hours. The fatter layers like actual painting and highlights will dry to the touch in 8 to 24 hours. The drying time depends on how thick or thin you apply the oil paints. The drying time also depends on your weather. You can see in the video right now, I am using the classic two-brush technique. I apply the paint with a brush, then I use a cleaner brush to blend the edges. I also do this with acrylics. The main difference here is that you do not need to rush. With acrylics, You only have a few seconds of window time to blend before the acrylics start to dry. With oils, you have minutes for the thinner application and hours for the actual painting and highlighting. Mixing oil paints is also a bit more fun than acrylics. It's hard to explain, but it feels more natural to mix oil paints. It must be their consistency or maybe the quality of the pigments. Now, we've mixed a reddish-brown skin tone. We are applying this color as a thick wash over the skin areas. I am applying this color with very, very light pressure, since I do not want to reactivate the previous burnt umber wash too much. After a couple of layers of washes, I am pretty happy with the result. Now, we let the washes dry for around 4 hours. Now you see in the video, we start applying highlights and do actual oil painting. Applying oil washes and thick glazes is fun and relaxing, but painting highlights with oils is more fun. The main challenge when layering and highlight painting with oils is that you cannot rest your hand on the miniature while painting. Floating hand when painting on canvas is normal. It is not normal for miniature painting though. I must admit, it took me a while to get the hang of it. The main advantages of painting with high-quality oil paints are the coverage, the saturation of the colors, and you can blend them for hours. Blending with oil paints is super fun. I am pretty sure, like me, you have tried wet blending with acrylics. Wet blending acrylics is super tricky. Acrylics form a film on top as it dries. So, if you try to wet blend longer than usual, you will be disturbing the drying film on top, creating a nasty texture. Oil paints, on the other hand, will allow you to blend seemingly forever. Notice my glass palette in the background. Mixing more colors create more color depth. So to take advantage of this, I mix different tones of the same color as I paint our Cthulhu. Multiple tonal values create a more complex look, giving the illusion that I am a very good oil painter. Also, a great thing with highlighting with oil paints is that you can blend it down or even almost wipe it off if you feel your highlights or colors are overdone. In acrylic painting, aggressive highlight is toned down through washes and glazes. You cannot do this with oils, unless you let the figure dry for at least a day. Toning down colors and highlights in oil painting is as simple as blending it down with a clean brush. You see in the video right now that we are painting our final highlights. I am using a color similar to leopard stone skin. Leopard stone skin is from the warm skin tones. This color is a very bright pinkish-white color. Now, we paint a very bright red. This is our accent color to add a saturated accent color to our Cthulhu. This color will help our painting pop. I let our painting dry for 2 days and then applied a nice coat of matte varnish. I then let the varnish cure for another day. After the varnish has cured for a day, we now apply some quick washes. The finish of oil washes are very different from the usual Citadel and Warpaint's Fanatic washes. Citadel and Warpaint's Fanatic washes are ink-based washes. These washes are translucent over dark areas. They do not filter very dark areas. Oil washes, on the other hand, are like regular acrylics thinned with water. They are not as translucent over dark areas. Oil washes glaze or filter the dark areas a bit more. Also notice in the video how I blend the edges of the glaze or wash with a clean red brush. This is one of the main strengths of painting with oils, as seen throughout this video. Blending and creating beautiful color transitions feels so effortless. If I were to create my own line of paints, I will have a few base colors with very good coverage, much like Warpaint's Fanatics. Then, I want a line of glaze paints. This would be translucent paints with high saturation, slower drying time for easier edge blending that dries to a nice matte finish. Practically an oil glaze paint in acrylic form. I can dream, right? Think of cuttlefish colors, but with better saturation and a slower drying time. Now, before my final thoughts, a huge thanks to all the backers of this Kickstarter. First off, a huge thanks to everyone who backed this Kickstarter. My sincerest apologies for the horrible delay. I must admit, even though sketch and glaze is my go-to technique when it comes to miniature painting, painting oils is so much fun. I find airbrushing, on the other hand, a tad boring. But airbrushing is very efficient. Don't get me wrong, airbrushing is also fun once you get the hang of it. But since I came from the gunpla hobby, which is mostly airbrushing, I oftentimes find it boring. If you are new to airbrushing and totally new to oil painting, here are some tips. Once you have a good airbrush setup, use only airbrush-ready paints. These are Warpaints Air, Model Air and Game Air from Vallejo, Mecha Color from Vallejo, Lacquer Paints, and Kaleido Paints by Galeri. Also, airbrush at a fixed air pressure while you are still learning. Focus on just priming, varnishing, and painting of the base colors. Learn detail painting only once you are comfortable painting base colors. 25 psi to 35 psi is a good airbrush pressure starting point. Lastly, clean your airbrush well during painting. Think of this as the rinsing of your precious Kolinsky sable brush during painting. Now here are a few tips if you are new to oil painting. If you are shopping for oil paints, you can buy a set of cheap oil paints. Then get pricier black and white, maybe a pricey ultramarine, yellow ochre, and the primary red. The tip here is to mix the pricier oil paints with the cheaper ones to elevate the quality of the cheaper paints. Also, wick the cheap oil paints longer on a piece of cardboard since they contain more oils. I use Gamsol mineral spirit that I buy from our local art store. But if you have access to a generic brand at your local hardware store, which is way cheaper, use those instead. We hope you enjoyed watching this video. Again, a huge, very huge thanks to all who backed this Kickstarter. Now get to painting! Bye!